agronomic practices somewhere, and you have the choice to choose the situation, which is not the case, for example, in most of the countries, but which is the case in some situations. Well, you can take into account the context linked with. Sorry, excuse me. I have some disturb in my room. We link with the context of what could be the effects on the crop protection. Well, here I don't want to list that, but you have a lot of things to do at the farm level. For example, you can implement hedgerows in your own farm, linked or not with the hedgerows of your neighbor or at the landscape level, and you have a lot of things to do. I don't want to spend too much time like that because we can come back. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to stop me. I would like to, if there is no question, I would like to talk about regular monitoring of the plots, and I think the sentence is not good because we could say regular monitoring at different levels. It could be better, as it's linked with your question, Mathilde, before. And a thing which is very important is that you have not, as we have done for several decades, you have not to just see what happened concerning the pests or the one pest you are going to try to control. For example, if you talk to me about the tea mosquito bug in cashew nuts, for example, I think you will do that. I don't know when, today or another day, but I am sure you will ask me about that. We need to know, for example, what other criteria. What, for example, are the links of this pest with its natural enemies, with the interaction of such as competition, for example, with other pests and so on. And we have not also to stop this monitoring, these observations concerning the pest and their natural enemies, but we have also, because these are pillars, we have to see what happened about the biodiversity, vegetal biodiversity, animal biodiversity, microbial biodiversity, of course, not for each actor. Huh? I'm okay that a farmer is not going to see exactly which species are in the soil of and which microbirds are present in the soil of its farm. But we have also to see what happened about the biodiversity side and what about the soil quality, because there are two pillars on ACP. And of course, you have also, yeah?
Just concerning this point, for me, looking for the biodiversity of all the insects in the region, it's really a time-consuming work. So I don't know how we can do that, to see the natural enemies everywhere, to check on all the age in the region. For me, it's very complicated part, because we also need to check on the weeds, on the diseases of all plants. And I don't know how we can. I know that it's easier to monitor the symptoms on the plants. So on the plants, it's okay. I guess all the farmers, they survey the symptoms. But for the general biodiversity of natural enemies, pollinators, etc., for me, it's a very big work of specialists.
Absolutely. Your comment is very relevant, Mathilde. This work is chronophagous, but it's important. it has not to be done by each actor. But for example, the minimum is that to inform, to train the farmers to see the main criteria in his field. But for example, of course, what happened in the hedgerows is not the work of a farmer. We agree with that. But what happened in hedgerows could have effects on what can happen in the field. Okay, and for example, of course, to study the biodiversity, to study how is evolving the populations of pollinators, for example, is not the work of farmers, it's not the work of the advisors, it's the work, for example, of some researchers. And we of course, we cannot do all we have to do, but we have not to forget something. And I would like to stress that at this time, with what we call IPM, I call that agrochemical crop protection, we monitor nothing. We just go in the field and we apply pesticide. Of course, it's not true, really. I just it's a caricature, but it's schematic, but it's the case. And we have to, for example, to share the idea of that the work which is, for example, monitoring in the field, can be or can become important part of the work of a farmer or an advisor or something like that. And we can also make the same observation if we say, for example, the time devoted to application treatments of pesticides in the field, which is also chronophagus, can be partly replaced by, for example, something to monitor the pest in the plots, or to collect, for example, and to throw in a moratorium infested fruit of crop and so on. So we can say that the work of a farmer, the work of a scientist, the work of a advisor, the work of a policer can be evolved if you move from agrochemical crop protection to agroecological crop protection. Are you okay with that, Mathilde, and everybody?
Yeah, I have another question, sorry. I don't know.
But are you agree with that? It's important because
yeah.
if you...
But just concerning that, you know that in Cambodia there is a lot of service providers, and farmers are used to pay someone to do one work or one intervention on the crop. And have you ever seen any service provider for the survey of pest and disease, for example, at the regional level?
Of course, we have sorry, we have devices now in Europe. In most of the first I answer to your question. Yes, it exists. These are called devices for epidemiological surveillance. Of course, they focus, for example, on invasive pests or invasive animal pests such as fruit fly, for example, or a pathogen or a virus very dangerous, of course. But it exists. But it has not be. It can be very perfectionated, very how could I say? Very evolved in details, but it can be also very simple. If you do, for example, just a meeting, a video conference, for example, as we do now, and we share our information, not the farmers, but for example, some trainers or some advisor or some policer, I don't know. You can share. But in my region, you have a problem which is going to start with this pest, and what about you, and so on. So you can have an overview at the landscape level. Okay, and you can do exactly the same thing at the different levels. But for me, a farmer is the owner of a farm. So it means that the farmer has to know what happened in his farm, and of course, what happened in his field. And for crop protection today, for example, most of the farmers, I don't talk about Cambodia or any country, I talk in general, most of the farmers don't know what happened in the field for crop protection, for example. And for example, if you are a owner of your home, of course, you know what happened in your home. And it's the same thing for a farmer. But the farmer has not to spend time, for example, to get the knowledge of the monitoring at the landscape level. He has to get it by a device. And why not, for example, a policy could not be applied just to help sectors, organizations, people devoted to that, to make a survey regularly, not daily, not at each hour, not at each minute, but regularly to say at the landscape level what is going to what happens, but also what is going to happen. You know, Mathilde, you are working on that, but everybody knows that we have a lot of works done on modeling, and we have now quite good models that can say what are the main chances that can happen in the field or in the landscape or in a plot in the next weeks or in the next months. Of course, according to the knowledge that we spent before in the previous times and years. So does it answer to your questions? And for example, of course, in each, I would say country, if you talk about Cambodia, I don't know exactly how it's organized, but we have to discuss about that. We have to imagine. We have to be creative. We have to be to imagine what can we do, what can we find to have the best trade-off for example, for designing and implementing such devices. But they can be very simple. And of course, in the plots, you can spend 10 seconds, and you maybe you are able to say, oh, it's very nice, the situation is good, or on the contrary, it's very bad. There is a high infestation of that, and so on. But it's more difficult, for example, when the situation is not very good or very bad, in the middle, in average. So you have to spend maybe more time. But we have a lot of knowledge on that. A lot of things have been studied on this kind of monitoring. You have some devices, very simple, and so. But we have to adapt that to the different to the situation of Cambodia, for example, if we talk about Cambodia, and to the capacities, to the abilities of each actor, including farmer. You know, when I was working in Africa, most of the farmers didn't know read and write, but we have some devices, we have some techniques for an alphabet farmer, for example, to try to assess what happened in his field. So we need time to discuss of that, but we can do something. And of course, it's different to take to go in a shop to buy a pesticide to go in your field and to spray. Of course, it's another, for me, it's going to become another job. The farmer will not have to do the same thing in agroecological crop protection that he has done for a long time in agrochemical crop protection. Yes, you see, for example, the last subcategory. You can have a technique, for example, you take your field in a diagonal, and you see what happened. It could be a very easy way to assess what happened in your field. But you can also just go in the field, and after seeing at 3 plants, you know that the situation is bad or something like that. Well, but we have techniques for that. We have to be optimistic for that. It's a new work. I agree with that, but it's mandatory. It's exactly the same thing. If you want, for example, to do, you know, Mathilde, you know that with pathogens. If you want to do sanitation, you have to do sanitation. If you just say I have to do sanitation and you don't do that in the field, it will not work really. Same thing for using augmentorium. If you don't collect the infested fruit, you have not to build an augmentorium. It's easier to do nothing but to do wrong things. You have any questions? No? Okay.
No, I don't. And you know all that you can raise your hand if you have a question, or just
yes,
write.
But Mathilde, I cannot see the questions. So
yes, but nobody. I think nobody has questions.
yeah,
so.
that is just some pictures to show that for a researcher, for example, we have simple techniques to see what happened. But for example, it's easy to see what happened on the leaf, what happened on the fruit, what happened with what we call that Japanese umbrella. What happened in the tree, for example, what happened in the field, what happened in the edges, and so on. So, for researcher, for example, it's quite easy. We have techniques to have a good idea of what happened in the fields and in the surroundings. Now, a word, some words on what I think. And what for me is the most important categories of practices in agroecological competition, which is devoted to preventive practices. Of course, I am going to talk about cropping system level, but we talked before, but we have also a lot of things to do at the landscape level, not the farmers, but other actors, for example, managers of landscape, which is another job. Manager of landscape has to share information with agriculture actors, for example, stakeholders. And if you see, you have also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main other subcategories in this framework. You have, for example, the first thing you have not to do. You have nothing to do. The first thing, but it's important to write it. You have to halt pesticide. Of course, it's schematic, huh? But the first thing to do, you save a lot of time. You have to halt pesticide. And of course, if you say to a farmer, okay, if we move to agroecological competition, first thing you have to do is to halt pesticide treatments. He will say, but of course, every farmer in the world will say the same thing. It's impossible. I can tell you it's possible. My experiences, my previous experiences shows that it's possible. Of course, I'm not saying it's possible everywhere in each situation we meet, but it's possible. And if you don't do that, halting pesticide, and it's quite easy. It's quite good for socio-economic issues, for environment, for sanitary, for ecology of your cropping system. But you have to do that. You save time also. The second is prophylaxis. And if you remember, we last time, to be more practical, we focused on only one small technique inside prophylaxis, even if I think somebody asked the question, what is the difference between prevention, prophylaxis, sanitation, and so on? We can find some differences, but the main idea is to prevent the infestations, the infections, the outbreaks, and so on. Then you have, for example, two main pillars of agroecological protection. If we say on one side, one important principle is to improve the quality of the soil, and we don't find these categories of practices in the implementation in the farm, it's ridiculous. So you can see here, for us, it's in the range of preventive measure focus on the improvement of the quality, the health of the soil. It's the same for vegetal diversification. I will make a small focus on that after. But if I say, for example, biodiversity is very important for agroecological protection, for natural regulations of crops, of course you have to find that in one of the categories of agroecological protection. You have, of course, something that you know, that you heard of, is biological control. Biological control, you have different categories of biological control, and I would like to remind that you cannot do together biological control with chemical control. It's not compatible, and firstly, it's completely inconsistent. And I put in another category other preventive measure that you can that you know and that you can find, for example, in a lot of categories of IPM, for example. I am going. Have you some questions about that? No? Okay, I carry on. I would like to make a small focus. So you can see vegetal diversification is a small set of practices included in preventive practices, which are included in strategy and so on. So it means it's of course it's important. You are going to see that, but it's only one subcategory of practices. So I make a small focus of that. I'm sorry, for example, for Florent. I don't know if Florent is here, but I said something like that 2 days ago in a seminar. Here you see it's my mapping. It's not to be read. To be read. It's my mapping. That shows the different category we just talked about, and vegetal diversification is only a small tactic that you can see in all of the arsenal of the practices. Inside vegetal diversification, I make a subtopic on crop diversification, and you see it's here, it's in blue, but it's only also a small, very small point in the field of what you can do to diversify vegetation in the farm, in the landscape, in the cropping system, in the agroecosystem. So it means that it's really a very small set of practices, but you will see it's incredible what can be the effect of crop diversifications on crop protection. And for me, before starting to show some results, I say that for me it's more efficient to diversify crops in the fields, in the farm, in the landscape, than chemical crop protection. I think that crop diversification is more efficient than chemicals. Here it's not to be read also. It's just to show you that inside plant diversification you can have different categories. You can structure them taking into account the spatial scale, the temporal scale. Remember, we talk about that. It's very important. For example, in the cultivated plot for farmers, you can distinguish what about the biological composition of the vegetation, and what about the spatial organization in the field. Same thing at the level of the crop system. You have also to take into account what we call the semi-natural elements, that can be, for example, hedgerows, but also growth, forest, isolated pet trees, and so on. And of course, you know that very well. You can range structure of the different practices, taking into account the temporal scale, for example, by talking about rotations, for example. And you have a lot of practices inside. I would like to focus on a very recent study carried on by French and particularly from CIRAD and Dutch researchers. It's an incredible work that has been done, devoted to the effects of crop diversification on different criteria, not only pest regulation, but interest us today, but also on other ecosystem services, or even on crop production. And you will see it's quite interesting. So it's a very large study. We call that a meta-analysis. In this case, I could say it's a meta-analysis because it takes into account near than 100 meta-analysis in this field. And if you don't know what a meta-analysis is a meta-analysis is a combination of a review of literature and statistical data on a lot of studies devoted to the same aim, but that has to get exactly the same method, the same data, and so on, the same criteria, and so on. And in this case, I am obliged to stress on that. It includes, you can see, more than it's around the world. More than 100 crops, near 100 countries around the world, near than 1 century, 85 years, and more than 5,000 studies. And of course, it can a meta-analysis can has the advantages to say a tendency, a trend, an average of what happened in this field that you study. This study pointed out 5 main categories of practices which are very interesting, and you know already them. One is called agroforestry, where it includes the implementation of tree inside crops. You have intercroppings. It means that you crop together for a significant period together different crops. You have, for example, a mix of varieties. It's used, for example, for rice. It's used for sorghum in Africa, and so on. You have, of course, crop rotation, and you have something that is very developed in Cambodia. In your work is cover crops. So let us see some results, and you will see it's incredible. That is not to be read. Here are the main benefits of the study about crop protection. First one is the effect of crop diversification on the yield. And if you see at that, it's quite a good result. If you an increase in crop diversification gives an increase in crop production, and you have also very impressive results on different ecosystem services, such as, for example, soil quality, and you see that it's consistent with agroecological competition. but also, for example, the quality of water. And I know I remember that in water for CAM you have the word water, so it's incredible. 50% of increasing in the water, in the quality of the water. And if you see in the field that interests us today, crop protections, it's incredible, but you have an effect. It's an average, of course. Sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's maybe 1000%, but an average of 63% of on crop protection. So it's incredible. It's why it's more than the efficiency of chemicals. And it's why I said, for me, crop diversification is more efficient than using chemicals. That is another way to represent that. For example, if you take all the categories of pests, I mean weeds, pathogens, animal pests, such as arthropods, for example. And if you distinguish the most efficient crop diversification practices, you can see that you have always a large increase in the efficiency on the different by the different practices. And on the contrary, if you distinguish the categories of pests and you group the different practices of crop diversification, you see exactly the same thing, and you can see a very good efficiency on weeds, for example. That is another table very interesting, because it can show that it confirms what we can see, that we can say about, for example, crop protection and the very good efficiency of cover crops, for example, but also for intercropping and agroforestry on crop protection, but also the tendency that the meta-analysis shows for other criteria, not only production but also other criteria. And you can see a lot of results that we have not because we have not all the results. For example, I take an example for the effect of variety mixtures on for example, greenhouse gas emission. But when I see that, for me, it's incredible, because I don't understand why we are still using monoculture. If you can see these results, I don't talk about crop protection. I talk in general for the different ecosystem services. And of course, if it's not so developed than monoculture, it means that there are some bottlenecks or reasons and so on. And we can talk about that if you want. We can talk about several hours about that. But it means bottlenecks for technical reasons, but more and more for social reasons. I could say also for psychological reasons and so on. And if we want to move, we need a support, not only on technical and social aspect, but also in policies. For example, Mathilde, you asked a question before on how can we have a good idea of what happened at the landscape level. We could ask policer, for example, if they are ready to support monitoring at the landscape level. For example, I think it's a better way than subventioning people who grow, who make agriculture without good results, and to give me money replacing the decreasing of yield, for example. But it's another subject. But when I see that, when I see these results, I don't understand when of course you have lobbies, you have lock-ins for the use of pesticides and so on, but it's a very impressive result.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jean-Philippe.
No problem, Mathilde.
Yes, it's about the variety mixture. I don't understand that there is no data for pest and disease control, because variety mixture is usually used only for that, especially for disease control. And there are plenty of studies about the impact of variety mixture on disease control. So I don't really get the fact that there is no results here.
Yes, I understand your question. It's interesting, Mathilde, but it's one of the disadvantages of meta-analysis. So meta-analysis take together a lot of studies and is able to say, for example, on an average, you have an increase of for example, 125% of cover crops and pest and disease control. And if you have no result, it doesn't mean that it's not interesting. It means that sometimes, and you will see that on another slide after, sometimes you have positive results, and sometimes you have negative results. And for example, we know a lot of studies with a lot of results. So it doesn't mean we have no results on the effects of mixtures of variety on crop protection. It means that some of the studies or a lot of studies don't show positive results on crop protection, for example.
Yeah, but for variety mixture, I don't get it, because it's really I will not say always, but it's really very often very positive for at least disease control.
Absolutely.
It's a more agronomic problem. So in terms of production, I would not say that it's always positive, but in terms of disease control, I don't understand. But it's okay. Maybe we can discuss that.
No, it's important, Mathilde, because I agree with you. But it's one of the disadvantages of a meta-analysis, and this meta-analysis shows that you have a significant positive effect of variety mixtures on the production. If you see the first line, for example, you have a main result, because for farmers one of the main criteria is production. But this study, this meta-analysis, is enabled to show a positive effect on crop protection, and it doesn't mean that it's not the reality. I agree with you completely. I don't know any example where if you mix some variety, you have not a positive effect on different things. Not only on crop protection, but also for other ecosystem services. I'm sure, for example, it's very positive for pollinations. But anyway, it's just but because it's a specific study that we call meta-analysis, which has a lot of advantages. I think it's incredible to take into account more than 5,000 studies around the world for near a century. So that is an advantage, and one of the disadvantage, inconvenient, is that sometimes you are not able to show results, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. Okay, not having result doesn't mean that you have a bad result or positive result. It just means that in the condition of a study, here meta-analysis, you were not able to show an effect. Is that okay? Yes, another important thing is that the impact of crop diversification. I remind to you that we are in only in a subcategory of practices, which is important, of course, because you are already working on that. But on another criteria, which is associated biodiversity. If we talk about crop diversification, it means that we are talking about vegetal biodiversity on which we can act daily in your field, in your research, in your job. Okay? And the increase of this cultivated vegetal diversity has also positive effects on the associated biodiversity, which can be first vegetal biodiversity, but which can be also, and it's a consequence, animal or microbial biodiversity. You see that this study shows that if you increase crop diversification, you increase the associated biodiversity for vegetal. Here is just a slide to show what could be a diversified landscape or agroecosystem. And if you have an increase in a vegetal biodiversity, of course, you will have an increase in animal biodiversity. Here it's just some slides that I take off from a guide. We could talk about deliverables for farmers or for advisors in the future together, but we can do something very useful for stakeholders. And for example, you can see, or you don't see, but the red circles show some insects, arthropods, which are mainly natural enemies. And so if you don't spray, if you, for example, use crop diversification, you will get a lot of advantages, a lot of positive consequences. You will increase associated vegetal biodiversity, and of course you will increase associated animal biodiversity. And it's very important for crop protection because these natural enemies that you see or you don't see, I don't know if you are able to see something, but anyway, the idea that you have to remind, it's very important for what we call conservation biological control, which is use of present indigenous natural enemies of pests. For example, if we talk about animal pests, which are present but which are not efficient as soon as you have chemicals. So that I say it's very clear. If you stop spraying, if you implement crop diversification, you will, for example, improve and get good results in crop protection, for example, against animal pests. We could talk about other pests such as weeds, such as pathogens, but for example that. But it's not from today to tomorrow or to now for the next hour. It needs a transition period, and it's always the same thing. I stress a lot of that on that during the two previous webinars we had before. We have to meet the conditions of that. We have, for example, not to start if the conditions are not met. And one of the conditions to meet is to have, for farmers, for example, technical support, but also support from policies, for example, to help farmers to move from I said a dead end of the current way of protection of crops. If we to move to the sustainable way. So you understand, it's not we have not to get the same result than before, to push on a button and to wait for the response, the answer, or to know before starting. For example, a very common question when you are talking about that is, but okay, I understand, but can you tell me how long does it take to get this result? So you understand, we used to push on a button and to get the result, and the only answer I can say is that there is nobody on this planet that can answer to these questions. We just have to try to do that with the good conditions, for example, the good scales, not in a experimental station or a small plot and so on, but at the right scales. And we have to wait for the capacity of the communities to get an equilibrium and to have a balance for optimizing the functioning of agroecosystems before saying it works or it doesn't work. And of course, if you listen to the company that sell pesticide, they immediately will say, no, it's not possible to do that because you will get a decrease in yields. I just answer that in the experience I know, not only we didn't get an increase, a decrease in the yield, but we got an increase in yield. Anyway, nobody can answer to this kind of question. How long? Or another question is on which area we have to work, which is a minimal area to have efficiency of that and so on. Nobody knows. We have to take into account, for example, this generic tendency and to see the specific context that you meet. When I talk about specific context, I include, of course, the pedoclimatic context, but not only the social context. What are the motivations, for example, of farmers to move? What are their strategy? What are their capacity to move, and so on? So it's not easy, and it's why I stress, I point out, I repeat always that we have to take time to share before doing something. It's better to do nothing than to do bad things. And just to complete another study, it's another meta-analysis, very recent, only some months ago, that concern European Union. So we have to take that, but it's interesting because it's a meta-analysis on several hundred of situations where we study the effect of intercropping. I'm not talking about all the kinds of crop diversification, but I'm talking about intercropping. And for intercropping, you have impact by a meta-analysis on intercropping on the regulations of weeds. It's on the left at the bottom, and diseases on the left at the bottom, and insect on the right of the slide. So in green, it's the proportion of the situations where you have a positive impact on crop protection. So you see that it's a majority. It's go in line with previous results of the meta-analysis. In orange, it's the proportion of situation where you have no results. No, sorry, where you have not positive or negative result, but you have results. And in black, it's the proportion of situations where you have negative effects of intercropping. So Mathilde, you see, even for intercropping, you have sometimes not. It's not the majority, of course, but you have negative effects. And I think in some situations with variety mixture, for example, we can find also some studies like that. Well, it's just to stress that in other conditions you get exactly the same results. And the two studies I showed the results this morning are very recent, and it's impressive the intensity of the results. So we come back to that, but just to have a relative impression. If you remember, excuse me. If you remember, last time we also talk about only one sub category, which was the use of augmentorium, and you saw last time how it could be efficient if it's done well in the good conditions, and not starting today to have a result tomorrow or during the next night. And now I come back to it was concerning the fifth category. Now I just a word on the sixth one, because it includes the use of pesticide. And you will see that in agroecological competition, like in agroecology, it's not a dogma, it's not a sect. If we have to use pesticide, we will use pesticide. Our aim is not to, as I said before, is not to cry and to see, for example, pests eating the production. We have to use all the tools which are available. But before using pesticide, you have a lot of curative measures that are also available. And of course, if you don't do monitoring in your plot, you are not able to say that effectively you need a curative measure, for example. So it's important to link this possibility to use curative measure to it was the fourth one, to the work devoted to monitor, for example, pests or natural enemies in your field. And if you see, for example, the second point where I have my mouse, you will see that you have a lot of technique. For example, here it's including what we call inundative biological control. For example, it's in order to release some beneficials. You have bioprotection is the use of biopesticides, not only for crop protection, but also for example, to improve the quality of the soil. And we are going to read exactly the word use as a very last resort, the use of synthetic pesticide according to constrained, targeted, and precise modality. So it doesn't mean that if you are allowed to take a pesticide, you use it in a wrong way. You have to choose, for example, the right active ingredients, the right dose, the right location where you have to apply that. For example, if you have an infection of a virus or an infestation of a pest in a small part of your field, it's not needed to spray all the field. You can go only in this part. It's the same thing, for example, at the level of a tree. If you have only a part of a tree infested by some pest, you can only target your spraying treatments on this part. Excuse me, 1 second. And excuse me. Well, so you can do that in a good way, and after that you also have to do something that we can sorry, just a small disturb in my room again.
You buy
okay. In half of an hour, possible?
750, I think so.
Sorry? Excuse me, Mathilde, can you take 2 minutes, please? I have something to to do. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, Jean-Philippe. Maybe there is some discussion here. there is no question this morning, so we cannot discuss. I have a question, maybe someone can answer, but in the fruit trees here, they are always one single variety, or sometimes they are a mix of varieties? Maybe Soti, you know that?
I'm coming back, Mathilde. Yes, I'm sorry. It was just because it's the end of lockdown here, and it was due to that. I'm asked to go well outside, but I am with you, and I will stay with you for the 2 minutes.
Yeah, I was just
wait.
asking about the fruit trees here.
Yeah.
Normally they are a mix of varieties, or they are only one variety in the fruit trees, in the orchard?
In Cambodia?
Yes,
I don't know.
nobody answered.
Yeah. Maybe in
I think this morning we are very quiet.
yes, but because everybody maybe you are sleeping. Maybe you are too much
On
impressed
the
by the
road. Yeah.
maybe
Soti,
too
you wanted to answer?
Yes,
impressed by the results. I don't know.
but Matthew, could you ask again related the fruit tree is in Kanda province or in Cambodia?
Yeah, I don't know, in Kandal or in the different areas that because we were talking about the mango orchard in Kandal. It's always one single variety, or it's a mix?
For example, that is and someone can add more, but for me, in Kanda province, it's not only one variety, maybe 2 or 3 variety. But the most important thing is the variety of Kaljan. Yes. But what the farmer grow on the Chamka or orchard land is mainly about the how I say the swine Kaljan. Yes, swine Kaljan.
I'm not sure I understood. So it's they have 2 or 3 varieties in one plot, right?
No, only normally only one variety, only plot. Yes.
Okay, but different variety in the creek.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And someone want to add? Sunri? Yes.
Just, I mean, if I can add, during the scoping study,
Yeah.
I also visited the the area of vegetable production in Saang, Kathom, Saang, and I think all of the mango plantation is this calumet, the very general variety that they grow because of very high productive, and they can and then very responsive to the stimulation, so that they can do this off season anytime. Actually, as I remember, they do it like 3 times per year. That's so, I mean, you cannot believe, Jean-Philippe, when you were there, you were crying. Yeah, that from my my visit. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, with the
Let me add. Sorry.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes, let me add a little bit more. Is from our side, especially in the batch one, is mostly farmer they grow caution, and when the fruit tree is still young, they intercrop with the vegetable or some cash crop. Yes, but if we're talking about the fruit tree, or especially related to the mango, is only ones that I think is cow chen. Yes, and then maybe cow meat, as Radha said. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Radha and Suti.
I could tell you a personal experience. I had more than 30 years in Africa, and it was about variety mixture, and it was not devoted to crop protection. But for example, any farmer in Africa grow sorghum, for example, and he used about 5 or 6 varieties of sorghum. And his aim was not, and I can say still is not, to have the most important production. For example, he has a variety of sorghum which is used to trap, to be a sorghum trap for birds, for example. And as soon as he has planted this variety, he plants another one, which is the most productive variety for in the aim to produce more food and so on. He has another variety, for example, to make beer. You understand beer? Yeah. For example, he has another variety of very good quality, but with a poor yield, devoted to festivities, for birthday, for fest, and so on. And he also plants another late variety that can produce a minimum if, for example, the climatic conditions are not good. So already a lot of farmers have strategies, and sometimes, in most of the cases, they are not devoted to crop protection. But they know, for example, that with the example of birds, for example, they know that if they plant producing variety, it will be infested by birds, for example. So he has a strategy of using what we can call here in ACP, we can call that a trapping plot. So it was just a small story, and I'm sorry for the 2 minutes. Yes. So to conclude on this point, you have an order. I voluntarily represent that by a mind map, because a mind map can say something in a linear order, but also as you asked your question to before, Mathilde, with more how, I don't know exactly the word, horizontal way of thinking. It means okay. So you have 2 main words to remind. It's ecological, of course, because we are talking about agroecology, and order. But order, as you said before, Mathilde, of course we can do some mixture, but the main point is not to use pesticides at the wrong time. Pesticide has to be used as a last resort. Now, just two ideas that I would like to share with you. Yes, we must stress that observations and the share of knowledge between actors is very important to take the good decision. For example, you can have 2 farmers who are neighbors, one can take a decision. The neighbor can take another decisions at their levels. That the two decisions can be the right decisions, but maybe if we put themselves together and if they talk and share their information, maybe they will take a third decision, which is better for both of them. It's the idea I would like to stress. So it means that we really, between actors, but also between people within a category of actors, we have to discuss. We have to take time of discuss and to find maybe we can call that a trade-off. Are we do we really want to evolve, to change? Have we the capacity? Have we the motivation? Have we the support, and so on? And of course, with different, as I said before, different levels of reasoning. Another thing very important, I started by that. I would like to finish by that, maybe. I don't remember, but I think it's one of the last slides. Is that you have two kinds of issues, and ICP can answer that by generic answers. For example, the strategy that I showed to you is completely generic and can be applied everywhere in the world. But of course, you have to take into account the specificities of the context. As you can see, the local, the pedoclimatic situations, the motivations of the farmers, their strategies, the link with the other actors and the food system, and so on, and to make a link with the next webinar. I'm sure that you are going to ask me, okay, that is interesting, that is okay, and now what about cashew nuts? Can you give us a strategy to apply tomorrow morning in the cashew nuts? So my answer, of course, now you know me, I'm joking with that, but of course, I propose to you a generic strategy to implement in the field. And what I showed to you before, it's not theoretical. It's really practices that can be applied in the field. But
just Philippe,
yes?
next time we don't want to talk about cashew nut, but about
yes,
mango and vegetable production, which is the point in Condal province, and cashew nut will be for the time after for Treviño province, I think.
Okay, so sorry, you just remove cashew nuts and replace by mango. Is that okay? Okay, and I don't know if you ask today, tomorrow, in 1 month. I don't know, but you will. So we can have answers with generosity, and that we saw today is really concrete things that we can do in the fields. And you saw the results, for example, only on a small example, which is crop diversification. And you know better than me the other consequences, the other positive consequences on, for example, the quality of the soil than me. But of course, so I am talking about mango. and of course, you have to take into account the specificity. And for that, I am proud to say I know nothing, but you have the knowledge. So it's an example to show that we need to discuss. We need to have the same level of information before doing something which can be very wrong, and a bad example to try to have the move from unsustainable agriculture to a sustainable one. But it was just a joke, you know, and replaced by mango. Personally, I prefer mango. And I've already worked on mango, not on cashew nut. On cashew nut, I know nothing else than eating them. And just an allusion to the third, because I would like to keep time to share the third component of ACP, which is a space of social interaction between stakeholders. It's not completely specific for crop protection. It could be said, for example, for agroecology, but it's very important. And I would like to show to you that some studies are devoted to study at different level. For example, here you have a landscape level. How can we put together or to take into account together the two main components, which are social components, not only the farmer, but I would say maybe landscape manager, policer, scientist, I don't know, and the ecological components. What happens, and it's very, very important for crop protection. So it's just to say to you that we have also here an increasing knowledge. Of course, it depends of the situations. I think this study, it's from a colleague from INRAE in France. It's devoted to corn or something like that. So it's not mango. But anyway, it's important to stress that we have to share, to discuss, to find solutions to take into account these two kinds of components. Here it's just a reminder of the. But you know, I write smaller and smaller because the list is increasing, and we can also add a lot of things. So each time you will see the series of webinars with a smaller and smaller characters written. And usually now my last slide is devoted to for example, something that is very nice is the use that you can. I think you can find that in Cambodia also, the use of weather ants to protect the. Yeah, for example, the mango orchards. So I finished my presentation, and now we can take the time to discuss, maybe.
Yeah, thank you so much. There is no hand raised now. Just for the ants. So when you say that we can use pesticide as a last tool, if you use ants, you cannot use any pesticide, right?
Of course, it's completely inconsistent, because on one side you are going to kill the weather ants, and on the one side you say we use weather ants, so completely inconsistent. Of course.
So many preventive measures cannot afford any pesticide finally.
Yeah, and the difficulties is that it's for example it's more, even if it's more efficient, it's more difficult to manage. For example, crop diversification in the field than to manage monoculture, for example. And so we need to have support, technical support, social support, policy support, and so on. And we have to ensure that they are present before starting anything. But of course, another thing important is that we used to do some things for a long time, and it's difficult for the human nature to change the habits. It's not easy in the life. I'm not talking about crop protection, but in the life, it's not easy to say, okay, now I'm going to do other things that things I've done for 20 years. So it's not easy, and we have to discuss of that. It's important. I used during my presentation, excuse me, Mathilde, just to say that I am in touch with quite a famous researcher, an Australian one, which is now quite old. He's 80 years old. His name is Hill, Stuart Hill. And he is known because he has designed and implemented an approach which is called ESR. And I am in touch with him, and he says to me each time that the most important bottlenecks for him for moving or for adopting an innovation is not technical, is not social, is not political. For him, after 80 years, he says it's psychological. So it shows that, well, we have to discuss about all, even psychology of farmers, or psychology of scientists, or policers, I don't know, but we have to take into account a lot of things, and it takes time. And if you count on me to give you a cooking recipe for tomorrow to have a very good protection for mango orchards in Kandal tomorrow. I will say sorry, I'm not the good guy for that.
Soti had a question. Okay, Soti.
Yes. Hello, I'm Soti. I have one question related to the one slide that you mentioned about the preventing or measurement, and you also mentioned about the biocontrol and chemical control. We cannot practice together, but the real practice in our experience, some of farmers they try their best to apply the biocontrol at the beginning, but the end they decide to use the chemical using or the chemical pesticide to manage or to keep the yield. Yes, that is the reason that I said that the beginning of trying apply the agroecology by reduce the chemical or pesticide is really quite difficult for the beginning. Yes. The question is the beginning of the apply agroecology. So we can apply both of bio and bio control and the chemical control. Yeah, because the real practice is we really difficult to separate these two techniques. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment and questions. Very interesting. I will add a line, if you agree, to talk about the consistency and the complementarity between chemical control and biological control. We could do a webinar on that. It's original. In my life, I never heard something about that, but now I feel I have the possibility, the capacity to well, not to do a bottom-up webinar, but a discussion on that. Your question is very interesting. I have not said in my presentation the contrary that you said. For example, I have placed the biological control in the 5th category, and in the 6th one, I said that it was possible as a last resort to use pesticide. Okay, so it's exactly what you said. But I add, but first we had to distinguish within biological control different categories of biological control. You have conservation biological control. I talk about that quickly, but I can. I think it's a title of a webinar also. You have also inundative biological control, and you have classical biological control. You have also autocidal biological control. Anyway, you have different kinds of biological control, and you have also in biological control that we can call today bioprotection, which is the use of biopesticide, for example. And more, some policers, some researchers, some actors think that it could be a nice way to move from agrochemical control to agroecological control by using pesticide, by using biopesticide. So it could be a way, and it's a possibility, but we have to keep in mind that we have to leave the biopesticide also at a moment, because if you take the ecological, and we are talking about agroecology, if you take the ecological point of view, you have exactly the same effect of a chemical synthetic pesticide and biopesticide. For example, you have the same problem of side effects on the on beneficials, for example. So we have to take that into account. Another point I would like to say is that during the last century, biological control and chemical control have been developed, for example, by scientists or by the extenders or by policers, completely separately. And when we talk, for example, in IPM, to have synergy between different categories of practices, we never see something about the consistency of biological and chemical control. And for me, it's completely inconsistent. I don't, I agree with you if you say, for example, we can use biopesticide at the beginning and chemical pesticide at the end. But yes, but only for a transition period. It's not the aim. The ultimate aim is not to use pesticide, either chemical, either biopesticide. And I think also if you use biopesticide at the beginning, you will also kill beneficials because of their side effect also. It's not because it's biopesticide that it's not dangerous or lethal for beneficials. And I think if you use, after that, if you use chemicals, it's a pity, because you will kill the beneficials which still are in the fields, and the next season the level of population will be low. If you don't use the chemicals, the level of population of beneficial will be moderate or higher and higher each year. And 1 year, I don't know when, tomorrow, in 1 century, in 1 millennium, you will have an equilibrium without nothing to do, because you will have the impact of beneficial, for example, against a pest. So I agree with you. We have not to be dogmatic and to say no, we have not to do that. If we use biopesticide, it's better to use that at the beginning, but we have to keep in mind that we have not to use that for several decades, for example. If we want to move because the use of biopesticide, as you saw in my picture, was also included in the last category of practices, in the 6th one. Of course, before chemical pesticide, but it's curative nausea also. I hope I have answered to your good comment and good question, because you know, it's not easy. Huh?
Yeah, yes, thank you, and clear. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think there is no more questions. So next week, just to clarify what we discussed at the beginning, next week it's a holiday in Cambodia, so we will not have a training, and on next session will be on the 15th, so in 2 weeks, Friday at the same hour, and we can discuss more concretely on the case on the region of Kondal, the Prek, what challenges we will focus, and yes, we heard Jean-Philippe that we will not ask you for a cooking recipe, but just to discuss about what we can imagine as a solution or our first step in this kind of situation. I think you know very well this type of situation with a lot of use of pesticide, different fruit trees, orchard, and vegetable production in the same area. So a lot of pesticides used. We can
You know, actually, it's the same thing everywhere in the world. Not only in Asia, but everywhere in the world, the same thing. And what I can say is that you can count on me to do my best. I'm not a magician, but I think it's possible to do something if I repeat another time, if the conditions are met to start. And I think
exactly. So I think also with people who are involved in the place, we can discuss about how the farmer can imagine this or how they want to move if they do. So what is it good for you? For everybody?
so. Next week is
We don't hear you.
It's
Next-
holidays for you, but
Yes,
it's
yes.
also holiday for me the week after.
Oh, it's holiday for you?
No, but I'm joking, because you will talk about the situation. I will like
Yes.
on vacation.
Yeah, but you have 2 weeks to enjoy the new freedom in Vietnam.
Yeah,
So you can go outside, and after we come back with a concrete agroecological crop protection. Yes, Sati, you want to say something?
Oh, I just lost my hand.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so thanks a lot again.
Thank you again.
Yes, thank you all of you, and thank you, Jean-Philippe, for your.
Thank you very much to you.
Okay, see you again in 2 weeks' time.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.